Hey everybody, this is Dylan. Today I'm going to show you how I take a 25-pound case of these Roma tomatoes and turn them into sauce and diced tomatoes, which you could then use in any recipe like a red sauce, marinara, whatever. Or in my case, I'm going to can them into mason jars so that I can use them throughout the winter. And so I was able to get these tomatoes for 48 cents a pound, which is about half price. So I can produce a quart of these for like $2 instead of $3 or $4 for the ones at the grocery store that are kind of high quality and don't have any salt added, etc. So why do I like to do this? One, because it just tastes way, way better than the aluminum can ones at the store. Two, I know everything that's in it. I save money. It does take a little time, of course, but I'll show you a really simple process that I've come up with that's going to be specifically for these Roma tomatoes. So here's the big picture process. We've got this whole tomato and we need to separate it into its parts. We're going to take the nice fleshy meat of the tomato and turn that into the diced tomato, and we're going to take the core and the stems and we're going to turn that into the sauce, and then we're going to take the tomato skin off of here, and that's going to be blended up and dried into like a tomato powder, which you could use, say, for anything that calls for tomato paste. You could take the tomato powder, add a little bit of water, mix it into a thick paste, and there you have tomato paste. Instead of how we normally do it, which is to buy a little can of the tomato paste, use 1 or 2 tablespoons, and then throw the rest out. So there will be very little waste when we're done with this whole project. It takes a bit of time. There are a couple tools you need, some big pots depending on how many you're going to do. Obviously you don't need to do 25 pounds at a time. I usually do 100 pounds at a time, but because I'm making a video, it's just easier to do a smaller batch that would still be considered a large batch. One tool you're going to need is a food mill. A food mill is different from, say, using a blender or a food processor because the mill has this grate on the bottom, kind of like a cheese grater almost, that's going to separate out any leftover skins or the stems or the seeds that would otherwise have ended up in your nice thick sauce. So this is going to be a really important instrument. It cost me like 50 bucks. This is a pretty high quality one, which I'll put a link to in the description so that you know all the stuff that I'm using. You can find cheaper ones, but you do get what you pay for. When I did a 100-pound batch recently, I probably saved 50 bucks, and this thing cost 50 bucks, so I broke even on this tool in just one batch. So it is worth it. If this is something you think you might do on a regular basis, then you're gonna need to get a good mill. Other than that, it's just a knife, cutting board, and some big pots. And so let's get started. All I'm gonna do is take this pot of tomatoes and give it a good rinse in the sink. All I do is fill up the sink with some water and a little bit of vinegar, slosh it around really good, and then pull them out, and we're ready to go. Okay, I've got my first bowl of clean tomatoes. I'm going to cut out the stem and the core exactly like I do for pico. With Roma tomatoes, this works this way, but with other tomatoes, you may have to do a different method to get your seeds and core out. But all I'm going to do is cut the top and bottom off, and then come in from the side and cut out the core. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so all I'm going to do is cut the top off, flip it, cut the bottom off, come in from the side, and the core will cut right out like that. So we're left with the top and the bottom and this core here with all the seeds, and that's going to go into this bowl here. And then this bowl is just going to go into this big pot. The only reason I put it in this bowl is so that I'm not getting my pot so dirty when I'm taking all this wet stuff and going into it. So the bowl gets dirty instead. And then this piece where here the meaty part of the tomato, it's still got the tomato skin on it, so I need to blanch this for a minute to get the skin off, because we don't want the skin in our actual diced tomato mixture. So all I'm doing is dropping it into this dunk tank here, and then I'm going to blanch it after. You don't have to use one of these. You could just drop them into a pot of boiling water and then take them out with like a slotted spoon or a colander or something. No big deal, same thing. Blanching them is just going to loosen up the skin so it comes right off, but I'll show you that. So now we're just going to repeat this for all of the tomatoes, cutting the top and bottom off and coring out the inside. All the wet stuff and the core goes into here, the flesh over there. And that's all there is to this step. so I've got my blanching basket here full of the tomatoes. And what I did is I put it into the pot, and then I filled the pot up with water so that I know exactly how much water I need in the pot without adding the tomatoes and overflowing it all over the stove, for example. So now that I've got the water level figured out, I'm gonna pull these back out, set them aside, and get this pot of water up to a good strong rolling boil. All right, all of my tomatoes are chopped. This is the ends and the cores. I'm not gonna add anything to it, and this pot's just gonna go straight onto the stove. I'm gonna put it at about a medium heat so that I don't burn the bottom. Heat it up to a boil. It will give off tons of water. It won't look like this. It will look like a pot of tomatoes with juice. And let it cook through for like 30 minutes or an hour or so. And then we'll be ready to mill it. That's it. Heat it up to a boil, let it simmer. You can leave it uncovered so that some of that liquid does boil off, which is fine because we're gonna have to reduce our sauce after. And that's it for the sauce. So we'll put it on the stove. All right, we've got our tomatoes here ready to dunk. We've got the sauce that's heated up and ready to go down to a simmer and just chill for a while. And then I've got my pot of boiling water and I'm ready to drop in my tomatoes. So let's do it. I'm gonna leave the heat on high because the tomatoes just cooled the water somewhat. Start a timer for a minute and keep your eye on it because it may take about a minute, maybe it takes a little bit longer, but you'll see the peels, the skins start to kind of peel away from the flesh. And that's when you know you're done, and then we're just gonna pull them out. Okay, so I've got my blanching basket here over a bowl to catch any of the remaining water. I rinsed a little bit of cold water through so I could do this faster because otherwise they're pretty hot. So I've cooled them off a bit, and all I'm doing is taking this piece now, and the skin just pulls right off of it, and you're left with just the nice diced, or the nice whole pieces of the tomato flesh, which will pile up and then we'll chop a little bit. You don't have to chop them very carefully because they're gonna break up on their own when they're in your recipe. As they cook, they just kind of crumble into little pieces. So you don't have to like specifically dice them up real fancy or anything. And the tomatoes, the peels, the skins here should just pull right off real easy. This should be fast. And then when you have a little pile, just give them a rough chop in 2 directions and you're done. And they're off on their own now over here. So it's actually a good idea to put your tomato skins into a colander so that any remaining liquid just kind of leaks out because you don't want them to be too wet since we're gonna be drying them out anyway. So that's just a good quick tip. Okay, we're in pretty good shape here. This is my pot with all of the diced tomato pieces. This is ready to go. You can heat it up or cook it into whatever recipe you want to use it for right off the bat, or in my case, I would just heat this up so it's hot and then I'll can it in mason jars and quart-sized mason jars. I'll leave a 1/2 inch headspace and process them for 15 minutes. Same with pints and quarts for tomatoes. But that is all I will do with them. But you, like I said, you can heat them up and cook them into a sauce. You can put them in the fridge like this and then cook them throughout the week with whatever various dishes that you want to do. But they are ready to go. So now onto the tomato skins. These are ready to go as well. All I'm going to do is put them into the food processor, or you can use a blender, same thing. And I'm just going to give these a good grind, and then they can go right into your dehydrator, or in my case, the freeze dryer. Okay, that should be good. All right, and that's the tomato skins. They are ready for whatever you want to do with them. And now let's do some sauce. We are ready to mill the tomato cores and ends into sauce. So I've just got the tomato sauce that I've been cooking on the stove, and all I'm gonna do is ladle it into my mill. I've got, if you have the same mill as me, I have the medium-sized blade in. It comes with 3 different hole spaces, like a fine, a coarse, and a medium. I've got the medium. And all I'm doing is ladling in all of the liquid and chunks here. And I'm just going to spin it clockwise and then reverse it for a spin and go back to spinning it clockwise. Reverse it, because when you reverse it, you're cleaning off the milled up skins and stuff off of the holes so you can give them another pass. And this is all you do, is just spin, go backwards, spin, until it's pretty dry what's left in here. And once you're just left with a pile of skins and seeds in there, we're just going to use a spatula and kind of pull it out, and that's going to go into the compost. This is all done and used. And then keep on going. Okay, and then you're left with the nice sauce here that we're going to put into a big pot, and once we're done here, we'll reduce that down by about half until it's nice and thick. Okay, so out of the entire 25-pound box of tomatoes, this is all that's going to be going to the compost. This is the leftovers of the skins and seeds that were from the sauce, and that's the only waste out of the whole thing. Now we've got our sauce, which is more like tomato juice right now. So I'm going to put that back in on the stove, and I'm going to simmer it until it's reduced by about half, till it's, the normal tomato sauce thickness. And then it's ready to use as well. You can either put it in your fridge or can it like I'm going to do. The choice is yours. So I'm going to heat this up. Be careful not to let your sauce stick. As it starts to thicken, it might settle and then burn on the bottom, and you don't want that because that scorched flavor will totally ruin your sauce. So just keep your eye on it. Give it a stir once in a while as it reduces. Make sure it's just on low heat, medium low, enough to have a light simmer, bubble up to evaporate off that water. Simple as that. Here is a jar of the tomato powder that I made from my last batch. You can see that it's just these skins dried, totally dried through, and you can grind it up into a powder after it's dry, or like I did, just shoved it in the jar and sealed it up. But that's all there is to it with the tomato skins. I'm not going to show you the freeze drying process or the dehydrating process. All you do is dehydrate it. It's pretty simple. So that is the tomato skins. All right, this is it. The sauce here is looking good. It's not reduced very much, but I'm a little impatient, so I'm just gonna go ahead and can it, even though it hasn't reduced as much as I normally let it. And here are the diced tomatoes just heating up. The diced tomatoes do not need to be cooked. I'm just heating them up so that they are the temperature of the canner when they go in. You don't want to add cold stuff to your canner because it could cause your jars to crack. So I'm just heating this up to temperature, and then I'm going to go and can it all, and that is a wrap. Okay, well that is the process, y'all. I'm going to can all this stuff like I said. If you want to see a step-by-step of canning, you can check out my how to can video. I've got a step-by-step on there. I've done tomato sauce in another video, just tomato sauce by itself in the past, so check that video out. I think I did water bath canning for that one. So you'll be able to see it both. Other than that, super easy process. Takes a little bit of time and energy. The only really specialized tool that you need was the food mill, but it's cheap and it pays for itself really quickly when you do this. The finished products taste so much better than the canned stuff that you buy at the grocery store, and you know what's in it. Just tomatoes and nothing else. So I encourage you to give it a shot. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions or concerns. Please do like and subscribe to this video. I'll keep more of them coming. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.